Hello, I'm going to tell you about how to do the Heron kit. So you will have received your bin full of materials and supplies, and you are aiming for something like this. Feel free to change anything you want. You can use what's in the box to create something completely different if mood strikes. But I'm going to give you the step-by-step on how to create the Heron. This is probably one of the more challenging of the kits. So if you do have cutting experience, that's helpful, but if you don't, that's okay. We've got lots of workarounds. Take your time. This is something that you can start and then set aside and then come back to, so you can work it in stages. So I'm going to open up the kit and see what we've got here. So we've got a bag of tools. Don't worry if there's some moisture in the bag. That could be one of two things. All of the tools are sanitized before they're put into the bag. So there could be moisture from that. There also might be moisture from the cutter, which has a tiny bit of oil for the tip. And sometimes that will get on a few other things. So not to worry. So we have a cutter, we have a tea light, we have our pliers, our nippers, we have a spoon, tweezers, oh there's a bit oily, and we have an eyedropper for our glue that should be in here somewhere. It's coming. This is our sticky glue, which is going to be used with our Q-tips. And there's our, this is a little bit of hairspray. It says hairspray on the bottom. And this is what we're going to use the eyedropper with. The hairspray and the sticky glue are going to set everything together so that you can easily transport it back to the studio, or if I'm picking it up, I can get it back. This is your bag of cut glass, a bag of stringers, and what we call vitrograph, which are the squiggly bits. This is our base glass that we're going to use to place all of the glass onto. We have a little baggie that has the wire loops. If you don't want to be able to hang it, just don't glue the loops on, but it has little pieces of glass. You can use those pieces of glass, or you can use beads. We have a little pot of beads here as well. And then we have a whole bunch of different glass bits and bobs. I'm going to leave these in the bin for now, but this is all frit. That's what we call crushed glass, and so you've got a bunch of different colors here. There's a ruler, though none of these cuts are straight. That said, if you need a ruler to cut a straight line for anything, if you're going off script, you can. Look, there are 3 Sharpies in there, so I'm making sure that you won't have be missing a Sharpie. And then there's safety glasses. Now, of course, I'm using my own glasses, but there will be safety glasses in there for you. Now, at the bottom of the bin, there's some painter's tape. And the idea is that when you're finished your piece and it's glued and the glue is dry, it's rock solid, you can then place your finished piece in the bottom of this bin, and you can just lightly tape with the painter's tape, 2 of the corners, just so that when in transport, it's not running around in the bin. It's going to be solid. All of these other bits and pieces, when you're done, tools, everything, will go into the bag that was enclosed in your bin as well. So they will be separate, so they won't be interfering with your finished glass piece. So when you're done, only the glass piece is in the plastic bin. Everything else is going to be in this bag. So I'll leave this bag over there for now. And so now step 1 for creating your Heron. You also, in the bin, will have received 2 drawings of a heron. Very simple drawing, and again, you can change the drawing if you like, but this gives you the template to work from in order to get this guy. So for one of the drawings, you're going to take your scissors that were included in the bin, and you're going to cut out the individual pieces of the body, the head, and the beak. And I've jumped ahead here so that you don't have to watch me cutting. You're going to then end up with little pieces like this that are your pattern pieces, basically, for cutting out the body. So I'm going to put, I'm not sure if the camera's going to catch all of this, but I'm going to put this here upside down for me. I'm going to grab my glass. The reason you have two printouts of the design is that one of the two printouts you're going to put your glass on top of, and that's obviously when you're working on it, it's going to be facing you, and that's what you're going to use to fit all of your pieces together so that you can figure it out. So for the cutting, please watch the cutting instruction video first to give you an idea, but the added skill for this particular one is cutting with a pattern. If you've ever done stained glass, this is how we do stained glass, but if you haven't, this is kind of a fun new skill. So you've got your little pattern pieces, you decide which color you want for which part, and I'm going to use this color for this breast of the bird. So I've got the pattern on top, and I'm just going to use the Sharpie marker to trace that pattern around the top. And I have a very shaky hand, but it's okay because it'll all work out. The beauty of this, which I'll be showing you in a second, is that I like to stand to cut, so I'll just stand up here. I'm going to take 2 stabs at getting this inside layer. So I'm not going right in right away. I'm going to score from point to point. Take that off. Do another one. Little tiny slivers out. And don't worry, as I say, if this breaks, we can piece it back together. Also, if it's not quite a perfect fit to the pieces next to it, don't worry about that either. There we go. That's pretty good. And then I'm going to take the outside. The outside's pretty easy. This is a bumpy piece of glass. Speaking of bumpy pieces of glass, it's always easier to ooh, I may have an issue here. It might break on me. There we go. Do it in 2 stages. I'm using the rolled edge piece of glass. Oh yeah, it did break. That's okay. I'm going to use the nippers and just take off this little extra piece here and this little extra piece here. You might want a bowl. Of course, I have one there that I didn't use. You might want a bowl to work over so that all these little bits fall into the bowl. But there's my piece. It's totally okay that this is broken, because when it's fused together, it'll all melt nicely together. And as you can see by this, I have sprinkled frit over top, so it's covering up all kinds of little gaps and inconsistencies. It hides everything, so don't worry about any pieces that you have to change slightly in shape, or if there's a gap, not to worry. So what you're going to do, you're going to cut out each of the individual pieces for the head, wing, tummy, breast, and there's yellow in here. There we go. Yellow in here for the beak. And you're going to use the glue pot and a little skim of it. Like I'll show you how little. just that much. The less the better, and in fact it will dry faster, and will fire much better in the kiln if it has just a tiny bit. Obviously enough that it will actually stick, but I'm gonna get it so that it's close. Yeah, that's good. So then I'll go and work on the other pieces, glue everything down so it's rock solid. And I'm going to make sure that the glue is dry and it's rock solid before I start adding any of the crushed glass. But in addition to that, we have feet and legs, and we have the bulrushes as well that need to be addressed. So while my pieces are gluing, imagine I've cut all the other pieces. While my pieces are gluing, I'm going to work on the legs and feet. Alrighty, so now we're on to legs and bulrushes. So I have lit my candle, and I'm going to use my Grozer pliers here, and only because I want to get pretty close to the flame, and I don't want my fingers that close to the flame. That said, don't put your Grozer pliers into the flame either. They're just supposed to be outside of the flame. So what I'm going to do is hold my stringer just above the flame and pull away. Ooh, got some very long strings there. I'm just going to break that off with it. So what that's doing, I'm going to break this too, is giving me the little toenails on the feet. If you're not comfortable doing this, you don't have to do it. It's just an extra little piece that's kind of different to give it a different look. So you can do that for all of your toes. For the, I'll show you one more time. You just bring it in. You're gonna see it melts very fast. And what I'm doing is pulling directly away with both hands so that it pulls apart and I get that pointed end of the stringer. So there are the little toes. And if you need to bring them even smaller or do other little bits, you'll find you can trim it down with your little mosaic nippers. Sometimes the mosaic nippers don't meet as closely, so you can break it also with your Grozer pliers to get little tiny bits if you need. Okay, so that's the candle. Very important step for toes. So the other thing you're going to be doing is creating your bulrushes outside of the cut glass. And so you're going to grab a little bulrush here. There, this one's already the right size. For the ones that aren't the right size, most of the stringers and Vitrograph can be snapped in your fingers. Make sure you're wearing safety glasses, but you can just snap them in your fingers. If you're not comfortable with that, or if the piece of Vitrograph is a bit thicker, just use your mosaic nippers to break it into the section that you want. So this one is probably pretty good as is, so I'll just show you without breaking it down further. I'm going to get my sticky glue, and I'm going to get my brown frit jar, and I'm going to just stick my stringer into the sticky glue. So I've coated the stringer with sticky glue, and I'm going to stick it into my jar of frit, and it should coat nicely. Then I can place it where I want it. And you can also there's a little spoon that's included in your kit, and you can also tap out. I would suggest tapping onto your spoon and not with this, because I've seen way too many times, I may have done it the odd time myself, where you're tapping it out from the jar and half the jar comes out, and that can become a huge mess. So better to tap it out on the spoon, and so you can still place extras around where you need it. Then of course we can break off the extra stringers for extra pieces down here. You've got all of your little jars. There's a nice green. I've put a couple different blues and some other browns in there so that you can play around with color or have multiple colors if you want. In here, I've put, now there aren't any on this one, but just to give you options, I've also got a whole bunch of beads in here that you could put down for rocks, or if you wanted to use them for holding your wire in place instead of the clear ones, you can. So there are all kinds of bead options as well. There's way more glass than you need for the project included in your kit, so be sure to put anything that doesn't go on your glass back in the bag so that it goes back to the studio. That allows us to keep the cost down, but offer you tons of different options of what you want to use to create your masterpiece. So once you've put all of the crushed glass, your beads can be put down using the glue. So you're just gonna put a little bit of glue on the bottom and stick that down like that. For the crushed glass, obviously you don't want to use the tacky glue. You're going to put down your crushed glass. I'll just show you with this. There. So your crushed glass, put wherever you want, and then you're going to grab your eyedropper and your hairspray. There is a slight fragrance to this. This is the lowest fragrance hairspray I could find that works for our purposes. It has to be a hairspray that burns off clean in the kiln without leaving a residue. So then you can just leave drops of hairspray on top. You don't have to lift up each one. Just put a bit of hairspray on the top there. And that is all you need. Also, when you've done your stringers and stuff, a little bit of hairspray on that. I think the final step that I didn't mention is the eye, and there's a little jar full of potential eyeballs in here. So the very final step, you can put your little eye down. Sometimes the tweezers are good for this. Also, the tweezers are good for placing the frit in various places to make sure it goes exactly where you want it. The legs, I use the hairspray to just keep these guys down. Careful not to use too much hairspray or they'll start to swim around and float around. So if that happens, you can grab a little Kleenex or a paper towel and just suck up a bit of the hairspray, and that'll bring it to a reasonable, manageable amount. I think that I've covered everything. I'm also going to have a list of steps in the box for you so that if you prefer reading over watching, you can do that. But you can watch this video again and again, and you can call me or contact me via email and ask any questions. I'm here to help you. Have fun!